Hello again, Sabri here, and I have a little crystal friend with me. I don't know if you can see it. This is called snakeskin agate. I got this not too long ago, and I'm going to keep it with me, keep it close. It has a cool meaning. I have this printout of what it came with that say what exactly it's for or what it does. And one of my favorite parts here, which I wanted to include it with 6 degrees of inclusion and what we're doing, I want it to be kind of the energy behind it, the crystalline energy behind it. The third bullet here, it says that it creates a safe and peaceful space for beings of diverse backgrounds, thoughts, and feelings seeking unity and connection for the good of all in the physical dimension. That's awesome. That's why I have it here, because that's what we're trying to do. 6 degrees of inclusion. We're connecting beings of diverse backgrounds, thoughts, and feelings in a sense of unity and for a common purpose of using our innate gifts and powers, doing the inner work to make this world a better place, because we have the power to do it. You and me, all of us. We are the ones to make this happen. So snakeskin agate. Cool thing, huh? So last time when I left off on this video, we were cut off and we're reading about a dream that the author, Robert A. Johnson, had. He called it, if you remember, the four hoodlums, the dream, where he was walking in a area of his old childhood neighborhood, and he walked by and he sensed that he was going to be robbed. 4 guys came out, 4 young hoodlums, he calls them, and they start feeling him down, and he moves his money to another pocket next to his heart just before they come out. And then they're checking him, and they find out where he had his wallet and was empty, and they eventually find his chest pocket and they find the money. But then afterwards, he says, strangely, they became so familiar with each other that afterwards they kind of became friends. And that's the dream. And so here he's working through the steps of the interpretations. We're reading step 4, which is rituals, but here is Robert Johnson's interpretation of the symbol of the left shirt pocket over his chest. And I'll just reread that last paragraph that cut off where we were and continue from there. So he says that in Jung's model, the feeling function is not connected with emotions, as some people assume. Feelings and emotions are distinct energy systems in the psyche. When people feel, they're actually assigning value. If you feel love toward another person, you are assigning the highest value to that person, affirming that person's worth and value. When you feel that something is beautiful, you are again assigning a value or recognizing a value in that thing. Therefore, the feeling function could better be called the valuing function. It is the function in the psyche that has the job of recognizing values in people, things, and ideas, and distinguishing what has high value from what has low value. It is your feeling function that tells you whether certain people are good for you, nourishing for you, in a feeling sense, or poisonous for you. If your feeling function is working consciously, it tells you what is right for you and what would be destructive for you. Once I saw that the shirt pocket corresponded to the heart level, further associations with Kundalini Yoga were opened up. The Anahata chakra is located at the level of the heart. The center of consciousness is reputed to generate and control the refined feelings. The powers of love, refined discrimination in feeling matters, appreciation of beauty, spiritual feeling, unselfish love, and relatedness toward other people. This chakra generates the feelings about what is good, true, noble, or beautiful. The Kundalini makes the same distinction between feelings and emotions, apparently for the raw primitive emotions, that which makes one an emotional or volatile person, are associated with a lower chakra, while only the more refined and rational feelings proceed from the Anahata chakra. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with the chakras. We have 7, they're energy centers of the body. There's 7 main ones. People will go on to say there's one above the head, there's ones in the palms of your hands, at the soles of your feet. But the main ones that we're talking about, they start with the root chakra, and then it moves up to the sacral, and then it moves up to the solar plexus. And then from there, there's the middle point chakra, if you will, between the 7, and that is the heart chakra, or the Anahata chakra, which here it says generates the feelings about what's good, true, noble, and beautiful. And also, he's going on to say that the chakras that make someone emotional or volatile are associated with the lower chakras, which would be the root or the base chakra, again the sacral, and the solar plexus, because they deal with security, finances, sense of belonging, then creation, creativity, or sexual energy or lack thereof, blocks in those areas, and then sense of power, your self-esteem, your solar sun, your sun of your body. And then once those lower chakras are balanced and opened up, then you can move through the Anahata chakra, which is the heart again, and that's basically, I've heard it said in a nice way, that that's kind of like the barrier, or not the barrier, but the divider between when you get in harmony with your emotional being and all of those things that I just mentioned, then you can rise up and express through the heart, and you become a being of love, and you can express love because you love yourself essentially, and now you can express that love out, and also rise up into the levels of uniting and harmonizing your higher chakras, which it mentions as being the more refined and rational feelings that proceed from the Anahata chakra, and those above it, which would be the throat chakra, the third eye chakra, and the crown chakra and beyond. So those are the more rational thinking ones, and then the other ones, again, get those in harmony and in alignment, and you can push through and break that barrier. Loving yourself, now you love others, you see the world as a bigger being of harmony and light. So moving on, the next image that he deals with from the dream of the 4 hoodlums is the hoodlums themselves. So here's what he thinks first, again, in the 2 ways that he goes through his dream analysis. The first is the stream of consciousness, which is just associations of words, and the next one is more, the first one is more just like written, everything that comes to mind as it is, and the second one is more of a flow, like writing it out as a conversation to yourself, thinking out loud, but through writing it down. So with the first version, he interprets or associates the image with outlaws, people outside the law, which equals something outside the established order of the conscious mind or my ego world. Outside what society has decreed, shadow, saboteurs, because they steal money, therefore steal my energy, power, resources. 4 hoodlums equals an affinity with the 4-ness of the $40. 4 equals completeness, unity, wholeness. Wholeness comes through the hoodlum side of my psyche. They steal my energy unless I put it at the heart level. Gang equals gang up on me. That was the first version of his associations. Now here's the second way that you can do it, which is that conversation, that dialogue. As you can see, my mind is already trying to skip to the second step of the dream work. I am spontaneously thinking about what part of my interior self these hoodlums are. I associate them with the shadow because they seem to live within the ego's general field of consciousness, that is, the civilized town, but they live in a shadowy, unconscious, vacant lot outside my consciousness or control. They are unconscious, apparently repressed parts of my masculine side that are trying to be assimilated into the conscious ego or make a synthesis with it. Since they are outlaws, this means to me that they are outside the control of my ego's established world, outside my established attitudes or my self-image, my concept of myself. There are 4. This tells me that paradoxically, although they are hoodlums and muggers, they represent wholeness for me. That means I have to bring them into my conscious life in order to complete the self and be a total individual. I associate the robbery with a basic psychological principle. If you repress a part of yourself and keep it out of your conscious life, it turns into a robber and starts stealing your time and energy by creating a neurosis. This is its way of trying to force its way into your life. It sabotages you and prevents you from functioning as you want to. The quote, robbery can take the form of physical symptoms, illness, neurosis, anxiety, or even bad luck that seems to gang up on you, just as the 4 hoodlums do in this dream. I associate the overpowering of my ego in the dream with the fact that the archetypes of the unconscious generally have more power than the ego. If my ego refuses to make a synthesis with the unconscious contents, the unconscious has the power to bring my ego life to a standstill. I am brought to a halt in the dream, and if the situation were not mended in a positive way, later I would experience that halt in my practical life. The next image is the search for money. Physical contact in dreams means communication between parts of the psyche, communication between polarities, the conscious, unconscious, ego hoodlums, ego shadow. Synthesis in the psyche starts as conflict, ends in friendship. Search for resources, finding money not as important as finding where I put it. That's interesting. The next image association is with friends and becoming friends. Ending conflict, joining forces, joining pairs of opposites, respectable ego with primitive hoodlums, synthesis with other part of self, synthesis with shadow. Go over to shadow's point of view. Communication begins in conflict and stealing, ends with synthesis or partnership. Learn from the hoodlum. Make room for lawlessness in life. Friendship possible if money invested at right level. All the interactions we see between the persons in our dreams are forms of communication among the various parts of our total self. There may be fighting, wars, love, hate, friendship, enmity. All this is a kind of rubbing together of the polarities, a getting acquainted among the different energy systems that coexist within us. So this searching for the money in a curious way is the one form of communication my ego has with the hoodlum shadow part of myself. With the hoodlum or shadow part of myself. Most communication in the psyche begins in conflict. The unconscious parts of our personalities have to fight for equal time for some recognition against the dominant attitudes and power systems of the conscious mind. But fighting, robbing, some kind of confrontation is better than no contact at all. If from the contact the ego can learn to open itself to the viewpoints and values of the shadow side, then the conflict slowly evolves into friendship and synthesis. Now we move into step 2, where he applies the dream images to specific parts of himself and dynamics in his inner life. Williams Avenue. I am trying now to find the part of myself and the actual dynamics going on inside myself that William Avenue represents. One association that clicked was the Garden of Eden. That is, it is the original unsplit childhood state in which one feels no division of the world. One feels completely unified with parents, family, the world around. There are no discordant issues to deal with, no conflicts. Again, he's remembering his childhood neighborhood. When he had this dream, the scene was, it took place in a familiar street that he knew when he was a child, that he always used to go around, and he's saying that he felt completely unified at that time. with the world around him, with his family, with his parents, no issues, no conflicts at that time. Moving on to the interpretation, or with the interpretation, he says, why would this come up in this dream? What goes on inside of me that this fits into? When something of childhood comes up, that may be a sign that the dream is talking about the overall picture of one's life, the progression or developmental stages that have gone on since childhood up to the present. So I could look for a passage from one developmental stage to another. The clue here is the Japanese greengrocer. How do I contrast the quality of the Japanese family with the quality of Williams Avenue in general? If I look at this as stages and influences, it falls into place. Williams Avenue is my basic orientation to the world as a child in my white, middle-class, extroverted, sensation-oriented attitude. The foreign element in my own personality that was going to come into conflict inevitably with my childhood, Anglo world, is represented by the Japanese family on the corner. It is the introverted feeling side of me, the heart quality in me, a different set of values than my Anglo culture had. Dreams are said to have 4 stages of development, all of which must be present to make a complete dream. First is dramatis personae, which is persons and places. Second is statement of the problem. Third is response to the problem within the dream, and that's development. And the fourth is lysis, which is also the outcome or resolution. The original setting is Williams Avenue, which is my set, tight, extroverted, practical Anglo world. The problem is stated when I see the Japanese greengrocers. The problem is an encounter starting in early childhood with a culture that represents opposing values. But all that culture does is awaken the child to the opposing values that were already sleeping within him, dormant, waiting to be awakened. This is the beginning of a lifelong encounter with the shadow, a movement toward completing the self. The response to this problem, the development of this theme, comes later with the relocation of the $40 to the heart level and the robbery by the 4 hoodlums. So again, in his dream, before he goes up to that place where he's not very familiar, in the back alley next to the greengrocer, he has his money in his wallet, which is in his back pocket. He takes that wallet out and he takes the $40 that are in it and he moves that money to his heart pocket over his chest. And so he's saying that this represents a response to his problem. The development of the theme comes with the relocation of the $40 to the heart level and the robbery by the 4 hoodlums. So in order to be a little more specific, if I ask what part of me Williams Avenue is, I can say that it is the seed of my present ego structure, the beginnings of the value system that later became my dominant attitude and main viewpoint toward life. What is important to this dream is that this dominant attitude is one that squelches feeling, that is embarrassed by feeling, and equates it with embarrassing emotionalism. It is a culture that mostly uses sentimentality as a substitute for real feeling. He's going deep. I'm not sure I understand everything that he's doing here, but we're basically just trying to analyze the process of his dream interpretation. Remember, a few pages back, he says that he had to work with this dream for a very long time. It wasn't like this initially clicked to him. At first he thought at the surface, well, that's a weird dream, I don't know what to make of it, but as he kept working on it, and he'd revisit it week after week, and then he clicked with the idea of moving the money from his back pocket at the hip level to the heart level, and then he started associating that with chakras, then he started associating with this and that and the other thing, and then things started to form a full picture. So this is just his full analysis of the dream that we're getting to read, that he came upon after lots of work with this dream and all of these symbols. So the next dream symbol that he deals with is the Japanese greengrocer. It is as though I have a separate little civilization living inside me that is like the old-fashioned Zen Buddhist culture of Japan. That part of me is focused on inner things, on the life of the soul, on contemplating the archetypes in the face of God, searching inner harmony and consciousness, even the external things that my inner Japanese culture is concerned with, the beauty of a kimono, the delicate formalities and courtesies in relationships, the graceful ways of showing respect and doing things, all are outward symbols of the harmony of the inner realm that one works for. They too refer me back to the divine world. They strike me as outward signs of an inner grace. The world I was born into on Williams Avenue taught me to be concerned mostly with outer things. Make a decent living, get the bills paid, get things done, get the house built and the garden planted, get along with the neighbors and stay respectable in the eyes of the townsfolk. These qualities have their own value and relevance in life, but there is a little room for the inner world let me read that clearly. These qualities have their own value and relevance in life, but there is little room for the inner world in those values. It is the Japanese part of me that is interested in medieval archetypal Christianity, in Zen Hinduism, the great myths. It is the part of me that finds high, noble, and beautiful qualities in other cultures and religions. But my main association is to the introverted feeling quality in me. It corresponds later in the dream to the heart level. It is a capacity for relationship that, at its best, does not get sentimental or personal in the sense of casual and artificial. It values loyalty and substance in relationships rather than effusive words or shows of emotion that do not last. Next symbol is the vacant lot. This seems to be a place inside my psyche that is surrounded by my ego structure or conscious mind, city streets, but is a little piece of unconscious wilderness outside the control of my ego where nature has its way and my shadow can hide out. Let me read that again. The vacant lot symbol of his dream seems to be a place inside his psyche that is surrounded by his ego structure or conscious mind, which is the city streets that he's familiar with, but is a little piece of unconscious wilderness outside the control of his ego, where nature has its way and his shadow can hide out. That's the vacant lot. Can I find anything specific in my life that seems to correspond to this place? I know that there are funny places in my personality, lapses or lacunae, where I am suddenly uncivilized without warning. It is as though I had suddenly reverted to the forest or jungle. They embarrass me and I try to control them, but often I'm unsuccessful. I have been learning, however, that sometimes these are the areas in me where there is more spontaneity, life, feeling, and natural humanness than anywhere else. By trying to bring all these vacant lots under regimented control and make them respectable, I often squelch the best or most natural parts of myself. I try to wade into these areas of my personality periodically, much as the fire department comes and cleans out the dead grass to reduce the fire hazard to a little bit of consciousness and civilization there. But otherwise, I decide to let the weeds and wildflowers grow unmolested. I relate this to my feeling side. I get sudden enthusiasms for people. I suddenly like certain people and want to do things for them or spend time with them. I suddenly come off my formal, restrained, civilized English gentleman persona and pour out my love or appreciation to someone in a spontaneous burst of enthusiasm. I often feel embarrassed by this and fear that I've embarrassed other people or that things are out of control. but this quality often reaches out to me and starts warm, good friendships. It has led me into deep, satisfying relationships with people in many different lands and cultures. I'm often in a quandary over this vacant lot inside me. I keep thinking I should clean it up, develop it, get it under control, but then I conclude that it is better to let nature run it. Sometimes in the areas of love and feeling, wild grasses and wild flowers are better than formal gardens. Now I'm starting to get what he's associating here. That's awesome. The next symbol is the wallet and the money. Based on my associations, I think the money refers to my inner resources, my main energy and life force. The dream is focused on the question of where I focus my energy and my life. Money is something you invest. So where do I invest the main strength and resources, the main purpose and meaning of my life? In colloquial terms, where do I bet my money? Sorry, let me turn this down. It's seeming a little loud to me. In colloquial terms, where do I bet my money? Do I put my money where my mouth is? In quotes. The fourness, F-O-U-R-ness, because it's $40. He says, the fourness of the money tells me this is no minor issue. This is my main life energy, the principal thrust or direction or commitment of my life. Where I put this dream money is symbolically the place where I invest my entire self, my life, my highest capacities. What values, what aspect of life am I committing all of that to? Then he goes into the next symbol, which is the hip pocket. I am connecting this image to several overlapping collective attitude systems or beliefs inside me, a basic, unconscious, assumed way of looking at things. First, it is an attitude of wanting to be hip, in the sense of being included in what certain groups of people are doing, wanting to be in or part of the scene. I also associate it with the hippie pattern of talking about peace and love when actually other motives are lurking behind the sentimental verbiage. All this adds up to a kind of collective imitation of deep feeling, but it is really a way of talking the language in order to fit in with other people or with a fad. So I think the movement of my money away from that level and up to the heart level tells me that I have to move the money away from collective expressions of emotion or sentimentality and invest myself in real feeling relatedness to individuals and to values that genuinely mean something to me. That's awesome. The next symbol is the shirt pocket over the left side of the chest. In the first step, two ideas clicked strongly for me. And so again, what he's doing here, he's in step 2 of this dream analysis, and he's he's going through each same dream symbol, taking it back to step 1 where he first gave it associations. So he associated his shirt pocket over the left side of his chest with different things. And then now in step 2, he's going back to interpret those things as, where do I interpret that symbol and that association to be present inside of me? And you look through all of those things that came through, and whatever clicks, that's what you explore more. So he says in the first step, 2 ideas that really clicked strongly with him. One is the heart and heart values. Second is the Anahata chakra in Kundalini yoga. Either way, I am connecting all this to the feeling function inside me and the feeling life within. In step 1, I explained something of the feeling function and the difference between emotions and feelings. It took me a long time to come to the point where I associated this detail, the left shirt pocket, with the feeling side of myself. This is because I had never thought of myself as a feeling kind of person. I thought feeling types were the highly emotional ones. I thought that since I'm not given to displays of emotion and can't stand